Hi there, my name is Andy Mangum. I'm a board game designer from Charlottesville, Virginia, and in today's video I am going to show you how to play my game Springsign and set up the game and maybe play a round or two. We'll see how it goes. Okay, great, so let's get started. Here's the box. Let's open her up, see what's inside. Now this is a prototype copy, so it's the final production copy is going to be a little better than this. Currently there's not an insert or a rule book in here, but there will be in the production copy, so don't worry. The game comes with 6 player boards. Each player board is double-sided, so there's a beginner side, which is kind of designed for entry-level gamers, and there is a adept side, which has asymmetric abilities and is for gamers who are looking for a bit of a crunchier experience. So let's put those over there. We've got our resource tokens. Oops. We've got our player markers, harvest tiles, and surplus tiles. Set those over there. We've got our cards. There are 2 decks in Springsign. There is the Settler deck and the World deck, and we'll talk about each. The game also comes with some reference cards and a special Rage card, which applies to the soldier character. We'll set those over there, and of course the game board. Let's get into it. So step 1, we're going to lay out our game board in the middle of the table and pool the supply of resource tokens, that's these guys, somewhere within reach of all players. Step 2, add the appropriate harvest tiles to the harvest section of town. The appropriate harvest tiles depends on the number of players in your game. So each harvest tile has a number on the back which indicates what player count it needs to be used for. In a 2-player game, we are going to use these 3 tiles. So I'll set these over here. The rest can go back in the box. They won't be used this game. So step 3, we are going to find the starting building cards. It's the Jacklander Bank, the Hillroot Holdfast, and the Market Square. Okay, and these are going to go into our 3 building markets up here in a random order. Okay, step 4, we are going to shuffle the 2 decks, the Settlers deck and the World deck. Step 5, we are going to draw cards from the Settler deck equal to double the number of players to a minimum of 6 cards. And these settlers are going to be played below the game board in this area right here. Next, we're going to draw cards from the World deck until we have 6 relic cards and 2 bandit cards. The cards that were illegal, like if I drew too many relics or too many bandits, or all of the buildings that I drew, they're going to get shuffled back into the deck. The relics that we drew, we've got 6 relic cards here. We are going to randomly put 2 of them face up in each of these markets here. Give the Folk Warden hat to whoever owns the most hats. Well, in that case, that would be me. Next, we give each player a player board. So the players can choose their player boards in turn order, or just decide freely if everybody at the table is okay with that. I am going to go with we'll say the proprietor. We'll set the proprietor right here. And I'm going to go with the magus. The rest of the player boards can go back in the box. In addition to getting their player board, each player will need all of the associated markers that come with that character. So this is going to be a different number for each character because the advanced or the adept player boards come with different abilities that require them to have a different number of markers. So I've got all of my magus tokens, and here's my proprietor tokens. Here we go. At this stage, each player could decide whether or not they wanted to play with the beginner side or the advanced side. I'm going to go with just the beginner side for this game, just to keep things simple. So step 9, each player puts one of their markers on the start space of the popularity track and the votes track, and do the same for the anarchy markers, which are these flame icons here. And finally, each player gets their starting resource tokens and popularity. The Magus, as the first player, is going to get these starting tokens, and the proprietor will get the exact same starting tokens. However, they will also get an additional popularity at the start of the game. This is a game about being elected mayor. So how do you win? The way that you win the game is by collecting votes on this track here. The first player to collect the required number of votes for your player count is going to trigger the final season of the game. At the end of that season, the town election will be held, and whoever has the most votes at that point will win the game. For our player count, 2, we are playing to 5 votes. So once somebody reaches 5 votes, that'll trigger the final season of the game. So how do you get votes? You get votes with popularity on this track right here. Every season, which is basically a game round, the players are going to be competing to move up on this popularity track here. At the end of a season, the town will hold a vote, and whoever is the most popular will reset their marker and advance one on the votes track. So you're kind of spending your popularity to get a vote. Everybody else will stay where they are. So if the proprietor here was at 1 popularity and they didn't score a vote, the proprietor is going to stay on 1 popularity, which gives them a leg up on the next round. It is possible to score a vote in the middle of a season. If you're at 7 and you keep gaining popularity, you immediately, and you move into this spot right here, you immediately score a vote, so you go up to 2 in this case, and return to the 1 space on the popularity track. Not the start space, but the 1 space. So that's popularity and votes. So how do you get popularity? There are a variety of ways of getting popularity in Springsign, but the most common is with these building cards here. These building cards kind of determine what is popular in town right now and what the townspeople want to see their elected officials doing. Currently, we start with the Jacklander Bank, the Hillroot Holdfast, and the Market Square. And these buildings say, whenever you take a relic card, you get 2 popularity. Whenever you take the Explore action, you get a popularity. And whenever you take a Feed action, you get a popularity if you fed that settler's last token. And I'll explain what that means in a little bit. It's important to note that these buildings are active for all players. So long as they're in play in town here, you don't have to buy them or anything like that. As soon as you fulfill one of these requirements, you get that popularity as a reward. Okay, let's turn our attention to our player boards here. Springsign is an action-based game. On your turn, you are going to be spending resources to take actions, and the actions that you can take are outlined on your player board. Let's take a look at the Feed action. That action costs a single green fish token, and to take that action, you just spend the fish and then you resolve the effect. In this case, it would be to take a resource from a settler. These settlers in town will have resources that you can take by feeding them. It's important to note that if you're playing with the Adept player board, these actions might be a bit different for you. But let's go over each of the actions in turn here. You've got your Hire action, and this says you can pay 3 blue news tokens to take a settler in town and any tokens on it. This means that you're literally taking the card and moving it to your homestead. It'll work for you now and generate new tokens that go right into your inventory. If that settler has any tokens on it, those tokens also immediately go into your inventory. You've got the Study action, which costs 3 purple book tokens. When you take this action, it lets you take a relic in town, so that's going to be one of these guys. Relics give you an extra passive ability or a new action that you can take. They're kind of like settlers, because once you take the Study action, you get to literally grab one of these 3 cards here, and then for the rest of the game, you get the benefit of that relic. It's important to note that relics are not active until you have studied them and taken them to your homestead. Buildings are always active so long as they're in play here. If you can see a building, you can use it, but to use one of these relics, you have to study it first. You've got the Fight action, which lets you spend 3 red muscle tokens to take the bounty of a bandit in town and then trash it. when you take a fight action and target one of these bandits, you get a choice of which of these abilities you want to resolve. The top part of the ability is always unique to that bandit. So for example, the Beaumont boys here, if you were to fight them and take the first option, you would be able to take a popularity, a fish, a lore, and a news from the supply, and then you would discard that bandit. However, the bottom option for a bandit is always going to be to take a popularity for each bandit in town. Sell action lets you spend a orange iron token and a resource of your choice, or 3 resources of your choice to take a resource of your choice from the supply. This is just a good trading action that lets you exchange resources for other ones that you might need more. The explore action, this is going to be the chunkiest action. Obviously it's got a lot of text on it, but this is going to be something that you're going to want to do a lot. The explore action lets you take a yellow work token and a resource of your choice to play the top world card to town. When you play a world card, you're going to literally flip over one of these cards here, and depending on what you get, you're going to place it in one of these zones, because in the world deck you could find a new building, you could find a new relic, or you could find a new bandit. However, no matter what you discover, you're going to get some benefit for it. If you find a building or a relic, you're going to immediately choose one of these markets to play it in. So if it's a building, you're going to play it in one of these 3 markets, or if it's a relic, you're going to place it in one of these 3 markets. And as a reward for discovering that building or relic, you're going to take all of the resources in the market that you played it in. So for example, if I discover a relic and I play it into this market right here, I'm going to take all of the work tokens that are here. We haven't seen any tokens pile up in these markets yet because we haven't done the replenish phase, but there can develop a huge pile of tokens, so this action can be extremely profitable. And finally, we have the return home action. Everybody has this action. So as you play through a season of Springsign, you can take as many turns as you want and keep taking actions so long as you have resources to spend on actions. But eventually, you're either going to run out of resources or you're going to run out of things in town to do that are useful. At that point, you're going to need to take the return home action. And this lets you claim one of these harvest tiles in town, which gets you set up with fish for the next season. However, once you take the return home action, you are out for the rest of the season. Okay, that's the basics of how to play. So let's get into an actual round of the game, just so you can see how this works. Springsign is played over a series of rounds called seasons. In a particular season, you start with the replenish phase, move to the actions phase, which is kind of the meat of the game, and then you go to the cleanup phase. And we'll go through each of those in turn. So during the replenish phase, each of these clock icons that you see indicates that that is a replenish ability. And these are going to be on settlers and markets. So wherever you see one of those replenish abilities, you're going to place the indicated token in that area. Okay, that was the replenish phase. Now we're ready to move to the actions phase. So during the actions phase, players will take turns, and on their turns, they can take as many actions as they want until one tells them to pass turn. So for example, I, the Magus, am the Folk Warden, so I am going to take the first turn this season. I need to take actions until one tells me to pass turn. So I'm going to start off by taking a feed action. So as we discussed, that is going to cost me 1 green fish, so I'm going to pay that by returning it to the supply here. And then I'm going to resolve the effect, which is to take a resource of my choice from a settler. Here are the settlers. These guys have resources on them. I'm going to choose which one of these I want. We'll grab a lore token from this character here. Now, it's still my turn. I can keep taking actions because the feed action that I just took, it didn't tell me to pass my turn. So I have to keep taking actions until one does. So I'm going to continue, and I think I am going to feed again this character right here, Arcona Cassidy, for a second lore token. Still my turn. I am now going to take a study action. So I'm going to pay 3 lore tokens, and I'm going to resolve this study action, which is to take a relic in town. So I'm going to choose one of these relics here. I think I'll take this one, the Skilled of Might. That action says pass turn at the end of it, but before we do that, let me just walk us through a trigger that happens here. This building, the Jacklander Bank, if you remember, it says whenever you take a relic card, you get 2 popularity. I just took a relic by taking that study action. So as the Magus, I'm going to move up 2 popularity. I'll also note that this relic, the Skilled of Might, says whenever I spend 3 or more tokens on an action, I get to take a muscle token from the supply. Pretty cool. So that study action says pass turn at the end of it, and we're going to move to the Proprietor's turn. On the Proprietor's turn, there's obviously less options available for him to take. So he's going to take a feed action as well, and he is going to feed this character for their news token. And hang on, we've got a trigger. Because this building, the Market Square, says whenever you feed a settler with only 1 token left, you get a popularity. So the Proprietor is now going to move up. And it's still the Proprietor's turn because that action didn't pass their turn. So they're probably going to feed again. And they could feed this settler here that has 1 token left. But I think that they would rather feed this character here with a 3rd news token. And finally, the Proprietor is going to take a higher action. So they're going to spend their 3 news tokens to take a settler in town and any tokens on it. So that, just like the Magus grabbed a relic card, I think the Proprietor is going to grab this settler, and this settler has 2 tokens still on it, so those tokens are going to go right into the Proprietor's inventory. Pretty nice. And that says pass turn at the end of it, so it's back to the Magus's turn. The Magus is going to take an explore action because they don't have a whole lot of options left. So they're going to spend their work token and another token of their choice, which is going to be the news, to play the top world card to town. So let's see what happens. It's a relic. So at this point, I have to choose which of these markets to play it in, and I think I'm going to play it right over here. So that covers up the relics beneath it. When a card is covered in a market, you treat it as if it doesn't exist. Once it becomes uncovered, like if I were to study a relic, it would reveal the relic under it, which becomes available for purchase now. Same with buildings. If a new building comes out and covers up an old building, the building under it is negated. However, a building on top might be discarded at some point, which would reveal a building under it, which then becomes active. So as a reward for discovering this relic and putting it in this market is going to pay me its 2 fish. The Magus took an explore action on her turn. So this building here, the Hillroot Holdfast, says whenever you take an explore action, you get to take a popularity as well. So the Magus is going to move up again. And the explore action says pass turn at the end of it, so now it's back to the Proprietor. The Proprietor now has a choice to make. The Proprietor could take a sell action by spending its iron and something else to get another resource, or it could spend its work token and something else to take an explore action. I think the Proprietor is more interested in taking an explore action because he'll get some tokens from it and also a popularity. So for taking explore action, the Proprietor immediately moves up a popularity, and then he is going to reveal a new card. It's a building. So this building is going to cover up one of these other buildings in the market. So what does the Proprietor want? I think the Proprietor wants to place this right here. So now we have covered up the building that gives you a popularity for feeding a settler that only has 1 token left on it. And we are replacing it with the Bounty Office, which says whenever you take a bandit's bounty, you may pay a lore token to choose both options. That can be pretty powerful. So as a reward for discovering this building, the Proprietor is going to grab those lore tokens and then pass turn. So the Magus is a little upset because the whole reason that she took these fish was to feed these guys and get popularity for feeding the last token. Not super happy about how that turned out, but I think she's still going to do it just so that she can get another explore action in. So she's going to feed twice and take both of these work tokens, and then she is going to explore as well. Uh-oh, it's a bandit. Bandits go into play here, and the explore action says whenever you discover a bandit, you take 2 resources of your choice from a single market. So the Magus now has to choose which of these markets she'd prefer to speak from. I think rather than risk exploring again, oh, she explored, so she gets popularity. So she's going to take those 2 tokens and pass her turn, because you got to remember, every time she explores, she continues to get popularity. Okay, so now it's the proprietor again. The proprietor is going to spend his 3 lore tokens and also take a study action. And I think he is going to take the Banjo of Legend. Now, because the proprietor has just taken a relic card, that triggers the Jacklander Bank building, which is going to get him 2 popularity. And the Banjo of Legend has a new action on it, which the proprietor now has access to. The action is called Serenade, which lets him spend a popularity, as if it was a resource, to take a token of his choice from a settler or market. That's pretty handy. So that's a pass turn. So back to the Magus. The Magus is going to be irresponsible and explore one more time, and just hope she gets something good. She's going to get a popularity for exploring. And then it's a relic. Not great, but not terrible. She's going to place it right there and take these 2 tokens from the market and then pass turn. So now it's the proprietor's turn, and he has an interesting choice. He could choose to return home right now and grab one of these harvest tiles, or he has an opportunity to make an interesting play. And I think for the sake of the video, I'm going to choose the interesting play. The proprietor is going to use his Banjo of Legend here. So he's going to spend a popularity to use Serenade. So he's going to go down on the popularity track and take a token from a settler or market. He's going to take a token from this settler here, and it's going to be a muscle. And he's going to do this 2 more times because he wants these swords in the market here. So he's going to go all the way back down to 2. Now, why is he doing this, you might ask? Well, he is going to fight a bandit. So he is going to spend his 3 sword tokens to choose one of these bandits in play. And I think he wants to choose, let's say, the Beaumont Boys. And he is going to take its bounty and then discard it. So remember, when you take a bandit's bounty, you have to choose which of these options you want. However, this building is conveniently in town, which says whenever you take a bandit's bounty, you may pay a lore token to choose both options. So absolutely, the proprietor is going to choose both options. So he's chosen the Beaumont Boys, so he's going to get both of these options. So we'll resolve both one at a time. So the first option is to take a popularity, a fish, a lore, and a news from the supply. So he's going to move up in popularity, and then he's going to take a fish, a lore, and a news from the supply. And because he activated the bounty office, he's going to take a popularity for each bandit in town. And that counts the Beaumont Boys because they have not been discarded yet. So he's going to get 1, 2, 3 popularity and then discard this bandit. So we'll move him up. 1, 2, 3. So you can see, by cleverly using his relic here, he may have gone down temporarily in popularity, but he, after making his moves, was able to take out a bandit and end up a few tokens and a popularity ahead. The Magus doesn't really have anything useful left to do, so she's going to return home. And I think that she is going to want to take this harvest tile here, which has 2 fish and a popularity symbol. The Magus, having returned home, is now out for the season. She's going to take no more turns, so now it's the proprietor's turn, and he's going to keep taking turns as long as he wants. There probably is not a whole lot left that he's very interested in doing, but I think he would be interested in grabbing 1 more lore token just to set him up for next season. With that in mind, the proprietor is now going to return home as well, and he's going to grab the 3 fish token. Now that both players have returned home, the actions phase is over. and we're going to move to the cleanup phase. So what happens in the cleanup phase? First off, dissatisfied settlers are going to leave. These settlers in town here, they're here to work. And if they don't get fully fed, they're not going to be satisfied with the amount of work that they've found in Springsign. So they're going to leave town. Currently, that means is that any settlers with tokens left on them are going to be discarded. So currently, that's Veritor Fulton here. He's going to leave town, so he's going to be discarded. And same with Hot Hands Sam. Now these tokens here, this is an important rule in Springsign. Tokens are never wasted in Springsign. So if they're spent, they go back to the supply. But if they're discarded, like they were just now, they are going to go into the appropriate markets to be available for purchase later. So this iron here is going to go into that market, and the muscle is going to go into the muscle market. That is the dissatisfied settlers leave step. Now we're going to move to Troublemakers Act. And there's another thing that we haven't talked about yet. So you may have noticed that bandits and some settlers have this flame icon on them. That indicates that they're a troublemaker. So troublemakers add to anarchy, which is this token right here. Anarchy kind of acts like another player. It can gain popularity and votes and even win the game if it reaches the required number of votes before you do. Anarchy is going to gain a popularity for each troublemaker symbol showing. So each bandit is going to count for at least 2. There are some bandits that have more. These 2 bandits each count as 2. So anarchy is going to go up to 4 popularity. And this settler here also is a troublemaker. So he is going to add a popularity to anarchy as well. That's a lot of anarchy. That's the Troublemakers Act step. Now we resolve harvest tiles. So each player is going to get all of the benefits on their particular harvest tile. So the Magus is going to get 2 fish and 1 popularity. So she's going to move up to share a space with the proprietor. And the proprietor is going to gain 3 fish. Once everybody's resolved their harvest tiles, they can return them to the town. Now we get to the interesting part, the town vote step. This is when popularity is converted into votes. So at this point, the Magus and the proprietor are the most popular characters in town, so they're both going to reset and score a vote. But remember, everybody else stays where they are. So the anarchy token is going to stay at 5, so it's probably going to get a vote next season. And any other players that were somewhere in between, they would also stay where they are. And finally, new settlers arrive. We're going to play new settler cards to town equal to the number of players. So that's going to be 1 and 2. Okay, that's the end of a season. So we'll just start with season 2 by doing another replenish phase. So again, each of these markets and each settler is going to gain more tokens, even if they already have tokens on them. And the proprietor, because he has hired a settler, he's going to gain these tokens as well. So the proprietor is going to gain a lore and an iron. Man, that's a lot of tokens. Each of these settlers is going to gain their tokens, and each market is going to gain tokens as well. And here's a tip. You can use these market surplus tokens, let's say +3 or +5, if you start to run out of tokens to indicate how many are in that market. So that's your first season of Springsign all the way done. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here just to the end of the game to show you how that works. So let's say the game looks like this. We've played several seasons and we're at the point where somebody is about to score a winning vote. Let's say that the Magus gets more popularity. So she goes past 7, which means that she immediately resets to 1 and moves up to the 5 space on the votes track. This doesn't immediately end the game, though it does mean at the end of this season there's going to be the election where the votes are tallied up and whoever has the most is going to win. So the proprietor and the Magus are going to continue playing out this season until both players have returned home. So the proprietor has a chance to collect more popularity. At this point, let's say that both characters have returned home. During the town vote step, the proprietor is going to be in the lead, so they are going to reset back to the start space and score a vote. At this point, the required number of votes has been reached, so the election happens and the game is over. During the election, player or anarchy with the most votes wins the game. In case there's a tie, like there is in this case, it's important to note that the votes track doesn't technically end at 5. You can technically go beyond 5 votes. If you have the chance, you can get up to even 6 or 7 votes. At this point, whoever has the most votes wins the game. If there's a tie, as there is in this case, the tiebreaker goes to popularity. So currently, it's a tie between the Magus and the Proprietor, so the Magus, having one more popularity than the Proprietor, will win the game. If the game was still tied, somehow, the tie would go to the player with the most cards or resources summed up. Example, the Magus would have a total of 5, having 1 card and 4 resources. Here's a few more rules that might come up during your game. There's no limit to the number of cards that you can have in your homestead. You can hire as many settlers or study as many relics as you want. You are limited by the number of inventory slots you have. If you ever have more resources than you have space for in your inventory, you have to immediately choose some to discard. And remember, when a resource is discarded, it doesn't go back to the supply, it goes right into the markets. At this point, you know everything that you need to start playing Springsign. If you're playing with the Adept player boards, you might run into a few questions. You can find the answers to those in the FAQ, or just by reaching out to me or some other The End Games employee online. That's it. You now know how to play Springsign. Thank you so much for watching, and please enjoy your future plays of Springsign.